Hey gang, it's Spencer here just to give you a little update. So I taped this incredible version of a conversation with Scroobius Pip on Monday. And unfortunately we had some audio issues for the first about 20 minutes of the show. It was a great conversation. I hate to lose it, but it was really tough to sit through. It was really tough to listen to. And I don't want anybody not tuning into the rest of the conversation because of those audio issues up front. So what we did is we clipped those off. We're throwing this video here. Please join us in progress. Check us out. Myself, Scroobius Pip, a conversation with. Hope you enjoy. It was great to get reassurance from people that look, you're on the right path. And we've gotten it here as well with our vet, with some trainers that we're working with. For anybody that has a dog, and especially a reactive dog as ours is, get information, work with people, and just trust that so long as you're doing right by the dog, you're doing the right things. It takes time for them to settle. It takes time for them to get, he's been here for 3 months. He's just starting to get like fully settled now, where he's like starting to realize that he is the prince of the house and he can just demand things and take things, and gets home from the walk and starts barking at us like, hey, give me stuff. So we know we're on the right path. So thank you to you and your partner. And I hope Finley's doing well.
I lucked out massively, or I missed out, but lucked out in that respect that when we rescued Finley, I was in Canada shooting a TV show during a pandemic. So I couldn't come back and forth. So those early months, my partner did the amazing training in the they've got far more experience with dogs than me. So I came back to this perfectly mannered, humored, well-adjusted dog, and it was like, all right, this is easy, isn't it?
Perfect.
So as soon as I saw your tweet, I sent it over to my partner and said, you'll be able to help more here because you've got experience in rescue dogs and all this.
Help him. So before we get to the steps of the journey and the borders being down and feeling ready to go, I want to talk a little bit about home. What is, you mentioned working class, Essex town, still there?
Yeah.
What's childhood? Are there siblings? What's the I guess the home life that nurtures that interest in myriad different things and a readiness to go, I got to pick what I'm supposed to be. I can be anything I want.
Yeah. Just a really supportive family, basically. Both my parents are separated. Where I'm sat now in my living room, my dad lives about a 10-minute walk in that direction, and my mum lives about a 10-minute walk in the other direction. So I've stayed very local. But yeah, it's a weird one because neither of my parents are particularly creatives. Like my dad worked a uniform company. My mum worked in libraries and for the council. So yeah, the creative side, it's a bit of a mystery where it came from, but I've said a few times, and again, it's only something I've realized recently. Probably the biggest influence on who I've become and who I am is my older brother. He's a musician. He's the one that's influenced so much of my music taste and film taste, and continues to. He's got a master's degree in philosophy. So, right, I honestly treasure our UFC nights more than anything in the world, because I don't think it's happening anywhere else in the world. Because again, in the UK, we're having to sit up till 6 a.m. and watch these fights, and there's these big pieces of filler, and in it, my brother, who's equally into MMA as much as I am, will be just talking about different parts of philosophy he's read recently, different things of art, and just such highbrow conversations. And make no mistake, I'm the receiver of the conversation. I'm listening and learning. But yeah, I don't think there's anywhere else that people are up at 5 a.m. watching men in their pants punch each other and also learning deep parts of philosophy and history.
Let's put Plato aside and get back to the face punching.
Yeah, exactly. It's wonderful, and I feel really lucky to have that. I had a weird thing a few years back after reading a book by Rutger Bregman called Utopia for Realists, who's kind of a historian and philosopher. I've had him on the podcast a couple of times, and I had a real realization that it's really important for us to not only forgive ourselves our pleasures, but prioritize them. as well. And I think particularly when you're self-employed, any downtime you feel so guilty for, and you really beat yourself up for, because we've built societies in the UK, America, and Canada where we are the product in a way. Our productivity, we saw it a lot in the pandemic. A lot of people struggled because you're like, I'm not being productive, and I've been taught that my only value comes from my productivity. Yeah, and I've steered into that for many years. And again, there's pros and cons. I think my kind of workaholic approach is the reason I've got to certain points in my career with no connections in these industries or whatever else. But leisure and pleasure are really important. And like, again, I think the reason I had a brief period doing a bit of MMA journalism was because I was going, I'm watching tens of hours of this stuff a week. I have to justify it. I can't do this as just a fun thing. I need to be, and I've written for Bloody Elbow and for UFC.com and numerous places, and all of that was a bit of a, it's justifying it. And I had a breakthrough, I said a few years back, going, you don't have to justify it. And what's more, you have to prioritize it. So my partner, who is an MMA fan as well, is also aware that if something comes up like a social event or something and there's a big UFC on, I'm probably going to prioritize me and my brother being in the living room and having this moment that is so unique and special to me over us going to someone's party or hanging out at someone's house or going to a launch event or something. And
I need to
there's
be
a guilt
home
around
and
that,
ready to sit and watch these fights.
Yeah. I need to be, just ready to drink this in. And again, that's changed in recent years because there's rarely not a weekend with a fight, but particularly a couple of years back, even when it was every month, maybe 2 a month, it was kind of like, right, no, those weekends aren't available. They're really important to me. So
I said to my missus yesterday, next Saturday, so Saturday coming up, the 14th starts 10 events in 11 weeks. Sweetie, I love you. I will see you on Sundays. We are going to start to prioritize Sundays as no work. Harry and I have shifted the podcast. We don't record it on Sundays anymore. I try to get all my work done so that Sundays can be wife and home and dog and family, because Saturdays are busy. I got to work. And even if it wasn't work, I'd be watching the fights, much like you.
It's the weird advantage of the UK time zone is I can maybe get a bit in the day because it's not going to be earliest. It's going to be starting is 9 p.m. And that's fight past prelims, kind of, So
and if
there's
you
a little bit of
you can push it to 11 maybe.
Yeah. It's a push, but it's doable. But I found it really weird. As said, I'm sure we'll get onto it. Being as where you are, I found it really weird spending 7 months in Canada and having fights on at like starting at 3 in the afternoon or something. And genuinely, I'd start to get sleepy, and it's just muscle memory. I swear it's muscle memory. I'd be really struggling to stay awake, thinking the fights are all over and it's 10, and I've struggled to get through the main event because I'm so used to it being 5, 6, 7 a.m.
Right. I saw the announcement the other day that so there was a show that's coming up that was supposed to be in South Korea. It has been moved back to the Apex. They are keeping the broadcast time for the South Korean market.
Oh, wow.
So the prelims will start at, I believe, 7 p.m. here for me on the West Coast. And I was telling my wife this. I was like, man, main card won't start till 10. I'm going to be up till like 1:30. And I had that pause and was like, I work for a UK outlet. I work for an Irish outlet. Like,
you had Sean's voice in your head.
I can't be saying shit. There can't be any moments of complaint. There can't be any moments of like, I'm going to do the recaps for UFC.com. There can't be any complaints because this is what everyone else in the world does all the time. Shut your mouth and do it.
3 a.m. is the usual pay-per-view main card start time here. So, and then it's just it's why Sean will be so angry if there's a lot of fights that go to a decision. It's not because they're bad fights, Spencer. It's
Right.
because
Because he's tired.
because
He
he's
wants to
tired.
go to bed. He wants to sleep. We will circle back around at some point here to you being in Vancouver and still following
Yes.
Farina Pizzeria or Pizzeria Farina and Purebred. But I
Yeah.
have a note here, and it's a thing you've touched on a little bit of words and language. And so there's a lyric from Scroobius Pip. Nothing is more entertaining than fucking with words in their arrangement. I heard it in listening and was like, wait, I need to write that one down because I'm going to put that one on my body somewhere, because absolutely there is nothing more fun than fucking around with words in their arrangement. When did words and language become such a important thing for you, and a thing that you recognized, one, that you had a way with, and two, that you could have fun with, that you could twist to grab people's attention?
Yeah, well, I mean, twisting words and stories, as you'll know, is so much fun. I mean, I'm only just realizing that you previously asked me about my upbringing, and I brought it to me and my brother watching UFC of an evening. So I'll twist anyway. But a key part on the upbringing front, as people may have noticed already, is I've got a stammer, and I've had a stammer since I was a kid, and I think it improved my vocabulary, which is weird, but it's because I would always be thinking a sentence or two ahead, identifying a word I'm going to stammer on, and trying to find a word I can replace it with. And I think it broadened my vocabulary. So again, whilst I didn't do great at school, when I got out of school and started to listen to certain rappers that then led to certain spoken word artists as well, I kind of felt equipped to kind of play this game and mix words about and play with syllables and see where it all lands. And that just became an absolute passion and addiction. And it was quick. As soon as I got into that, so me and my mates would write battle raps on the back of till receipts at HMV, just slagging each other off, just being horrible. And that kind of evolved quite quickly to me working on my debut album. And within a year or two of that, I was kind of out in the world, and it was my full-time job. I quit HMV to spend a year trying to be a rapper, spoken word artist, some kind of career musician, and almost a year to the day. Like I said, the plan was to quit for a year and give it a go. If it doesn't work, I'll go back to retail. Almost a year to the day. My first single came out with a guy called Dan Lasac, Thou Shalt Always Kill, and it got in the top 40 over here, and I had a career. So it was a quick realization, but like, I think there's a lot of things where it's a beautiful thing when you realize something you were doing just to improve yourself actually had a future use and benefit. Yeah, I think it's really interesting. I've spoken to numerous actors, black actors specifically, who were hustling hard as youngsters to become really good at acting, even though at that point there weren't many roles for black actors. And now, just as they've come up, there's a boom in black cinema, a boom in representation, and they're there going, oh, I'm not here for representation. I'm here because I'm amazing. I've put in years of work for an opportunity I didn't know was down the line, but here I am. And I think I had a bit of that with words. I was just playing with them, part a survival tactic from having a stammer, and part because it's fun. And then all of a sudden I was like, oh, I can do this as a job. Cool.
Yeah. Then all of a sudden it's like, let me just see what else I can do with this, because HMV is, in theory, always going to be here. It is not any longer. I do miss HMV. It was one of my favorite stops whenever you go to the mall. But then again, malls aren't really a thing anymore.
But it never ends on that language thing. And again, I feel really like I'm trying to drag it back to MMA every time. But just quickly, there's two things. Again, you start to spot things, and I've spoken to you about it before. But two things that jump out language-wise regularly when watching MMA is there's 2 or 3 fighters who have an only God can judge me tattoo on them, as they're about to be judged in front of 3 judges, which kills me every time. It's always great. And then, as I mentioned before, my brother's annoyance introducing a champion in a title fight as the undisputed champion when we're literally all here to watch it be disputed. It's what it's what I've stayed up till 6 a.m. for.
That's right.
I'm watching this be disputed. We are disputing it now. So to say undisputed,
that guy in the other corner takes umbrage with the fact that you think you are the best. That's what's happening here.
He very much disputes this. That's why we're here. But again, it just means language can. It's always fun when those things pop out to you and jump out and don't just wash over your brain as they might do.
I mean, it's the John Anik being on here and explaining the phrase, the origin of the phrase balls to the wall being from flying planes. The throttle is essentially, it's got balls on the top of them that you grab and you push it to the front. And he said, I used to be afraid to say it because you think of it from the explicit, I will say, connotation. Then he learned the origin and was like, now I feel comfortable. Was watching a fight. My missus happened to be in the room and I was like, hey, he talked about that on the show. And like, you get to just share this language knowledge. To that end, I need a greater explanation of this. So I need you to tell me, and I do agree, why is don't you ever say, I just walked away, I will always love you, one of the best refrains of all time?
I just think it's beautiful, and I love those little moments. I love poetry in commercial pop. I think it's a great thing. We found love in a hopeless place.
Right.
Is just a line of absolute poetry. It's over a banging dance song.
Yeah.
And I just love that. I think Miley for a long time was underrated because of all the scandal and kind of
because of who she was. Because first it was Hannah Montana and it was bubblegum, and then it was trying too hard to not be Hannah Montana. And now it's just like, oh, she bangs.
And there's loads of stuff. There's loads of stuff I overlooked because when a Wrecking Ball came out, I overlooked it because all the talk was about her naked in the videos swinging on a bar. I was like, oh, whatever, cool, enjoy yourself. And it was years later that, don't you ever say I just walked away. I will always love. Like the flow of it and the pattern of it is beautiful, and just I love when, I don't know. I think there's certain love songs as a genre feel played out, and when someone takes up a sentiment that I haven't heard in a love song before, it blows me away. There's a song by the Proclaimers called I Met You or Then I Met You, and it's all about someone being really happy being single and being able to prioritize themselves, and the enjoyment of that. And then they happened to fall in love, and that went all out the window, and it's a beautiful thing. And it's something that I'd never heard before. It'd always been on the I was sad and lonely and then I found you kind of thing. And this was like, mate, I was flying. I was loving life. And then I met you, and it's even better now. But I love finding those things. But
there's something about Miley. I'll always shout out to Miley. And anybody that doesn't like Miley, go watch. Like, it's fine. Have your opinions. You don't have to like her. But if you think she is just the half naked sitting on a wrecking ball, go find some of the, listen to Wrecking Ball, just listen to it. Don't watch the video. It will, it will change the way you think about it, but go watch some of the other stuff. The thing that got me, she did a tribute to Dolly at one point and did Jolene. And it was the first time I saw her, heard her do Jolene. And I was like, hang the fuck on. Like, what are we talking about here? Why is she doing this bubblegum shit? This is who she is meant to be. And we've subsequently seen it. The track with Mark Ronson was amazing. Nothing Breaks Like a Heart. Like, lady has talent.
The first bit of content I consumed in 2023, I woke up and someone had posted a video of Miley and Dolly doing Wrecking Ball at some New Year's Eve thing on a channel in America. And it was just like, that's the way to start the year.
That's how you kick off the year.
Astounding collaboration. Love it.
So we were talking about words and stories and music and things like that. I have to ask, one of your tracks, Terminal, big favorite of my partner in crime on the takeaways, Harry Powell. So I got to ask, is it based on a true story? Is it based on someone's experience? Or did you just sit down and craft this amazing little 3-minute take you through it all, suck us all in? Because it really is just, I'm into it. I want to see Terminal as a short film now.
Oh, it's weird you say that. You know, number one, I've written up a script based on that.
Okay,
but
all right.
we won't go into that because
all
I never
right.
know when that'll happen. But that was the only song that we used to perform live that I would sometimes stammer during. And it's weird because in general, you're on stage and the music takes over and all this. But because it is such a delicate song, and it was also one of the songs that made me realize I was an actor, as dramatic as that sounds. But it's because I'd stammer in that song because that song, the frame from which it's being told from is delicate and gentle. And I'd kind of become that character. But no, almost all of my songs, all other than one, are fiction. Often I'll normally draw from other stories. That one had a weird journey because originally it was shit. the original idea,
as great stuff sometimes is.
The original
for those
idea
that
was,
think it just comes out, sorry to cut you off, but for those that just think it comes out fully formed in chef's kiss, it often starts as shit that we're sitting here reworking 67 times until we're like, okay, now there's something here.
Yeah. But I mean, this is the weirdest reworks though, right? So originally I was listening to Atlantic City by Bruce Springsteen, and I just think it's astounding. And I got thinking of, I'd love to write a song about a couple. There's loads of songs or loads of stories about first dates. I'd love to write a song about a couple who've decided they've got to the end of their journey as a couple and want to go out on a positive and have a last date. Just go out and go, right, let's split up, but let's
do it on a good note.
Beautiful. Yeah. Like let's celebrate everything this has been, and then we walk away. And I kind of wrote that and it didn't really work. And I sat on it for a while, and then it evolved into this story of someone who finds out they've got a terminal illness and decides they want to go out on a high, decides they don't want to spend the last years of their life fighting it or whatever else, instead decides to go, I'm going to find a moment to choose to end it. And it's a weird one. I've always said, so suicide comes up a lot in my lyrics, and it's because of it touching me through close friends in the past. But I've always said I've never felt particularly suicidal, but I've always been aware that I've always theoretically thought the only time I'd be tempted to kill myself is when things are going really well, because I love the idea of going, oh, this is the best. Like, let's draw a line under it. And let's call it here.
Never going to get better
fantastic.
than this. Let's just...
It's an absolute peak. And I've kind of done that career-wise in that when I stopped making music, it was after our biggest album and biggest tour, and I kind of went, let's draw a line under that. This is dope. This is more than I should ever have got to do as a guy from a small town
want
with a
to
stammer.
Experience where the crowd starts going smaller and smaller and smaller, and I'm hanging on.
I did it with my radio show. I won a couple of Sony awards for a radio show, and I went, well, this station I was on hadn't won any Sony awards in years. I'm like, it's not going to go get better than this, is it? Like, let's call it a day. And with my, like, I had a club night for 10 years, and weirdly, I stopped that. And then 2 months later, a global pandemic hit and killed all club nights. But yeah, it comes from that outlook. So yeah, so Terminal is a story of two people having a beautiful night out on the South Bank in London, and one of them going, I want this to be my last night, and rather than a long battle of chemo or whatever else
it may be.
So yeah, it's a fictional one, but it's got a weird journey. And it, as I said, most of my songs, I write them as fiction because I want to be really honest, which sounds really weird, right? I make up stories because I want to be really honest. But if I was telling the truth of
You're
me
automatically going to couch it.
or of people close to me, I'm going to
Yeah.
close up and whatever else. So I'd rather go, right, let's get all the honest and real emotions out, but put it in a fictional. I'd
Right.
almost always refer to me, so it's always from my perspective, but it's normally, as I said, a fictional character. And yeah,
You
but
mentioned
love to Harry and for you as well for enjoying that one, because yeah, it's weird. That is one that me and Dan Lasac had a few of them where we'd have these album tracks that it's like, that's too weird to ever release as a single,
right.
but we need to play it live because we need to have the gigs not just be this one
those
note.
are the best
It's a party
ones
from beginning to end.
Those are the best ones. Those are the ones that everybody has album cuts that they look to on different albums. Like, we all know the singles, but it's when you can find somebody that shares an album cut or that has an idea and you go, oh, that album cut somebody told me is those are the good ones. So shout out to Harry Powell. He got his answer. There we go. You mentioned obviously the stammer and it not being a thing that you generally have to deal with on stage. Is there an explanation for it? Is it just that you're on stage and you're thinking about all the other stuff and you're hyped up and you're ready to go?
It's fascinating, man, because I've learned more about it in recent years since I've become a patron for STAMMA, which is the British Stammering Association over here. But still, so much isn't known and so much I don't know about stammers and my stammer. I know that there's a lot of studies to show that rhythmic stuff is easier. So the fact that
as you're
most of my raps are quite rhythmic, whereas terminal feels almost more like a conversation. It's so sparse beat wise. It's kind of loose. So yeah, you'd be in the flow of things. I think adrenaline can help. It's really interesting with stammers. Like, the reason I struggle at points with the activism side of it, because I want to get better representation and I want to play my part in that, but also I don't want to be the stammer guy, because I don't think of myself as the stammer guy, if you know what I mean. So it's a weird one, but there's fascinating things. Like, I had a period where I had 2 or 3 emails in the same either week or month from people saying, is everything all right, man? Like, I've noticed that you're stammering more on the podcast now than you did in the early days. Is everything okay? And I had to think about it. And I was like, yeah, I'm stammering more because everything's okay, but because I've got more relaxed. Again, it's a common misperception that stammering is a nerves thing. It can be for some, but it's not necessarily. And it's what's happened there is I've stopped fighting it. Like in the podcast now, I'm not fighting it anymore. I just freely stammer and I don't think about it. Whereas in the early days, I was probably trying to hold it down a bit more, switching words out, trying to avoid things. So rather than it being I'm in a stressful part of my life, it's like, no, I'm more relaxed. I'm comfortable with you lot hearing me stammer. So yeah.
Part of what made me think about it is you mentioned the on stage part and not being a thing. I just recently rewatched the David Letterman, My Next Guest Doesn't Need Any Introduction, with Billie Eilish, and she ticks with her Tourette's in the middle of the interview, and he kind of gets thrown off a little bit and does the like, is everything okay? And she's like, oh yeah, it's just my Tourette's. And then they talk about it a little bit and he asks, does it happen on stage? And she's like, no, like never.
It's mad,
and so it's just weird how our brains work, how our bodies work, how these things that present in moments just randomly, generally throughout the day. But then when you think they might be an actual hindrance, gone. Don't pop up.
It tends to not happen in acting as well. Like, most of the characters I've played, I've not had it. Like, every now and then there'll be a scene where I'm like, right, we need to go again. I've got stuck there. But you know, in general, it tends to not happen. But yeah, I find all that stuff interesting. I did a podcast, an episode of my Distraction Pieces podcast with someone called Tourette's Hero, and it felt really important because we had something like, I think it's had 100,000 downloads or something at this point. And I just had a moment of going, that's got to be the most listened to conversation between someone who has Tourette's and someone who stammers. And at the start, it's a
Right.
jarring listen, because with all these things, the first time you hear, I always remember hearing an episode of this past a week with Theo Von, where he had a young a lad with Down syndrome on, who's a weightlifter. And the first 10 minutes, you're a little bit, I'm struggling to understand this. I'm
Right.
struggling to hear. And
But
then
then
it
as
just
you pick
clicks.
up,
And the thing I like in it too is watching a film or a show with subtitles.
yes,
The first 5-10 minutes, you're really having to pay attention, and then you get in the flow, and it's just there. It all comes in. And yeah, that particular episode with a Tourette's hero was amazing for that, because from beginning to end, I'm stammering, they're ticking, but it's just an amazing conversation, and it works, and they're an
I mean,
amazing
look,
person. So
it's this conversation. We started out with some audio issues. We started out with some reverb.
yeah,
We have
yeah,
settled into a wonderful conversation. We will
I love
swing it
it.
back to some MMA for a piece here before we get into the rest of the careers and the rest of the jobs that aren't real jobs.
Yeah.
So is there, and this is certainly, I'm putting you on the spot, is there a favorite fighter of all time? Are there a couple that are in a group, or is it, nah, I just love the whole lot?
There's a bit of, I just love the whole lot. I generally just am up for good fights. I stopped making picks a few years back because I realized it was affecting my enjoyment, that I
Right.
wanted someone specific to win.
Right.
It's like, no, I just want a good fight. But I've got a big soft spot for Damien Maya, just as a technician. And in that particular run, after he'd had his title shot with Anderson and that, in that particular kind of second resurgence where everyone knew exactly what he was going to
Right.
try and do, and they couldn't stop
Right.
him. And that's the bit that fascinates me.
Same.
When it's like, I love people like Volk is amazing at changing plans and changing the styles, and you don't know what you're going to get. Connor has had periods of that, as much as I've got a massively love-hate
We all do.
relationship with
we all
Connor
do, Pip.
and
All
him
of
in
us
this
do.
sport. But
It's so
he's been
hard.
amazing that you don't know what you're going to get at certain points in his career. It could be anything. But I love people like Maya, who you're like, you know exactly what you're going to get, and there's nothing you can do about it. And that just, yeah.
I very recently put together a piece on historic finishes in Brazil, right? We go to Brazil in a couple of weeks' time for the first pay-per-view of the year. So we put together a top 10 list, and one of them was the Damian Maya Rick Story fight, where he squeezes out just the
squeeze
shot,
the blood out of his nose. Oh.
just the shot out. And it's the same thing. And when I talk about these different athletes, and Mackenzie Dern comes to mind just off the top of my head, of these athletes that are tremendous jiu-jitsu players and tremendous grapplers that need to get a little bit more Damian Maya in them. Just because it's exactly what you said. You know what's coming. You still can't stop it. I just need to get my hands on you in a certain position, and you're fucked. That's it. I'm going to climb on your back. I'm going to drag you to the ground. I'm going to do something. His initial run to start, you mentioned, against that mounted triangle against some guy named Sonnen. There was one in the third round against some Canadian guy named Jason McDonald that I loved.
Yeah.
And then that second run of just, I had the moment where I wanted to be a boxer. Now I'm going to get back to my roots, and I'm just going to grapple the Jesus out of these people.
Yeah.
Amazing. Amazing.
I love it. But yeah, so early days, early favorites would be Lawler and Orlovsky, just because you can't tune in and see them and not think they're the most coolest guys in the world, just doing amazing things. But then, also, as said, GSP and Rory McDonald, who I had on the podcast, just those guys who were, you're like, right, these are intellectual people. It's not just about, I'm going to go out there and swing and see what happens.
Lovely, thoughtful Canadians.
Yeah, exactly. So there's a big variation. But then equally, one of my favorite things I ever read was Eddie Alvarez saying that he trains for one round. because his plan is to go and take you out in one round. He's like, if it goes past that, I might be in trouble. I'll be honest. I'm going to gas. I'm going to be exhausted. I was like, I love the honesty of that. And he's like, no, I'm just going in there and it's just, let's get this done. Like, so yeah, there's a variation, I guess.
Is there anyone right now that really intrigues you, that sort of really captivates your attention, that you come into 2023 thinking, I want to see this sort of test. I want to see just how good this person is, or if they're not as good as we think they are, who stands out in that group for you?
The uncrowned King of England, Arnold Allen, just his improvements in the last couple of years. I've always been a fan of Arnold, always thought he was good. He used to train at the place at the Gracie Barra I used to roll at. So there was a period of being like, oh, he's just a hometown hero. He's kind of a local or whatever.
Kid, yeah.
And then the developments in the thing that always excites me, and Nate Diaz was always underrated for this, or at least at a certain period in his career, the developments during inactivity. So from one fight to the next, the developments are just amazing. And Arnold Allen has been the master of that in recent years, that each time he comes out, you're like, oh my God, this guy's got better and better and better and better. So yeah, I'm excited for Arnold. It's tough again, man, because of what we said about how hard it is to like MMA sometimes. Mohammed Makayev got a lot of hype, but has said some dumb and offensive things on Twitter recently, having received some dumb and offensive things in the past from Paddy, and like there's a lot of people. Chimaev's exciting, but missing weight and then talking shit afterwards just put a lot of that off for me, and I struggle to disconnect the art and the artist as such. That's where I struggle with cheering for who I want to win or not. If I think someone's a bit of a dickhead, I'll try to be unbiased, but I'll be thinking, I hope Ilia Topuria does exactly what Ilia Topuria did, because of
Bryce Mitchell seems like Bryce a bit of a dickhead.
Yeah. Bryce saying some ridiculous things, going, yeah, I'd quite like that. So yeah.
But I mean, that's the thing.
Topuria is another great example who just seems to, every time I see him, it's like, I love those fighters and I love that. I think I've heard you and Sean go both ways on it, actually. I think there's a level of this person is ready to be jumped up, but also I think as an MMA fandom, there's also a lot of, they could beat the champion already. So, well, let's let them get there a bit as well. Because, like, again, and this will annoy people, but I was very late to get on board with Khabib, with Islam Makhachev, because I just felt they look amazing against people who
they should look amazing against.
It's like, I want them to be, I really, and like, Khabib was the prime example of having those fights lined up and them falling through. So I'm not hating on him at all, but it was one of them where I'm like, again, like, you've not beaten anyone that has impressed me at this point. So I need to see that. And then they go on and beat those people at that high level and prove they are amazing. But still, it's I'm a big fan of people having to go through those rankings as such.
It's that balance of being excited. It's fine. Be excited.
Yeah.
So I'm in the midst of doing my Fighters to Watch series. We're taping this. It's 9 a.m. here. An hour ago, the middleweights would have come out, and Bo Nickel features prominently because came off Contender Series, right? All this hype. Some people in the industry saying, oh, he could beat Israel Adesanya now.
Yeah.
Well, maybe, but like, are we really going to say that? Like, let's let him get a few tests. Let's let him get there. So I understand completely. Yeah.
Earn
there's
your stripes,
something about,
because the reality is, like, we live in a Matt Serra reality. Like, anyone can beat anyone at some point, but you have to earn your way there.
That's right.
Matt could clip GSP and become the champion. It's one of the best moments, but he'd had a career to earn that opportunity to step in there and do that. And I think you've got to work your way up.
Yeah, I agree. So we'll shift to some of these other jobs that are not real
Yeah.
jobs that are jobs.
Yeah. Mhm.
You mentioned that it all just sort of fell in, and you just sort of, in the moments of being on stage and doing spoken word and rap, kind of went, oh, I'm an actor. I could probably do this, and I'd like to try this. And podcasting came in and streaming came in. What have been sort of has it really just been, I'd like to try that? And so you go and try it, and then it works out and you're like, yeah, I do like this acting thing. Let me do more of it.
A bit, yeah. The acting thing took a bit more outside influence. So I had a few different people who became mates of mine through them being fans of my music, who happened to be like actors I absolutely adore. And a few of them kind of said to me, when are you going to start acting? Because any time I'd catch up with them, I'd just nerd out. I'm a massive film and TV nerd. It's all I want to talk about and get these experiences of these guys. And that kind of point out, you know, when you're on stage and you're doing that angry song, you know, you're not really angry, you know, that's acting. And in the music videos and things like that, that's acting. And I'd always have that feeling of, again, a working class town. I didn't go to any fancy schools. I certainly didn't go to drama school or anything. I'm not allowed to do this. And it took a few people to say, no, you are. You're going to need to do a lot of work, and you're going to need to put the time in to get good, but you are allowed to. And that was another one. But because it had worked with the music, I initially thought, I'll give it a year. I'll try this out. And genuinely, within a week, the first week of me deciding I'll give it a year, I got an email from a casting director saying he's doing the new Guy Ritchie film, and they thought, like, they were fans of the podcast and they thought I had the right look for it. Have I ever considered acting? I was like, it's funny you say that, because I've just quit everything to become an actor. So there was a lot of luck in there as well. And then, yeah, the first time I was on set, I was like, yeah, I'm not going back. Like, this is what I have to do. And then, yeah, it's been a lot of, again, I've lucked out on meeting some really good actors who've taken me under their wing a bit. And part of that has come about from, as you can see from this MMA conversation, I'm not good at hiding my excitement. So when I'm on set, I'll do my job. And then when they wrap me and are planning on sending me to a hotel room in the middle of nowhere, I'll generally say, do you mind if I stick around and try and learn more and watch Tom Hardy and Stephen Graham and all these guys and learn from them? And thankfully, I worked on a few productions where they were okay with that. And people like Tom and Stevie kind of spotted that enthusiasm and would, in the breaks, be giving me little tips and saying, here's something I've learned, here's something I always wondered about, and things like that. So yeah, it's been no turning back since then.
So has the acting become a thing where you're working at it regularly, you're auditioning regularly, like it is job A? If somebody can get me on another show like Debris, where I'm away for 7 months filming, let's do it, and we'll figure out everything else around it. It's job A.
That's perfectly phrased. It's 100% job A. It's the focus. It's the thing. Every other job I've had, like when I was rapping, the thought of being a 50-year-old rapper was a depressing thought. The thought of being a 50-year-old actor, fucking A, I would have learned so much. I would have got so much. I would have improved. I would have learned more. Every job I've had, I've learned more. So yeah, acting is the job A, with a caveat of, I've been working on scripts for a few years now as well. So I've got a few things in development as well. So just that whole a TV and film world is here's what I'm doing for the rest of my life. And then the podcast and the streaming and all that is like, man, I get to have these amazing conversations. Right. I get to
do this other
with
stuff
these amazing people.
Well.
Yeah.
We touched on it. We've touched around it a little bit. What was it like spending 7 months, 45 minutes down the road from me?
Yeah.
On set, on location. I assume it's hotel, off to set, back to hotel, tour around Vancouver on your own if you want, and explore it. And did it feel nice to be in what I feel is kind of like England West. Like,
Yeah.
we got the same
Yeah.
weather,
Yeah.
generally
Yeah, yeah,
places
yeah.
you can walk about. We've got, public transit available. It's pretty similar. If you want to feel a little bit like home, this is the best place to come.
Yeah. It was the best and worst career moment I've had. Because I need to add the caveat that this was during the pandemic.
Right.
So we were filming the pilot when the pandemic hit, and I was literally night shoot up in some woods in Vancouver. And then it was stop, and I was on a plane 5 hours later back to the UK, because it was like, right, they're going to close the airport, so you need to get home. And then we got taken to series, so I was flown out again. But Canada cares. And the UK often doesn't, and America often doesn't. So I had to isolate for 2 weeks, which I think everywhere should have been doing. But then even when I came out of isolation, because I'm on a production that can't get shut down, and because, a lot of places were closed and all that kind of thing, in that 7 months, I couldn't really socialize at all.
Right.
I think I had 2 meals where we ate outside with one of the other cast members. I was in an Airbnb on my own. It was over Christmas and New Year, and I couldn't head home, or people couldn't come out. So I had a block of time off. And also, the biggest thing you learn in the film and TV industry quite quickly is there's a lot of waiting around.
Yeah.
So I think the longest stretch I had not being called to set was 6 weeks.
Jesus.
So I had 6 weeks there. And again, you're never sure schedules are changing. So I didn't know I was going to have 6 weeks, but that's how it panned out, with things being moved around and things like that. So 6 weeks on your own in an Airbnb, with all you can really do is go out for walks and do outside stuff. Again, as you touched upon, no better place to be, my friend. Walking around the lakes and the parks and all that was a godsend. I would rather have been there than anywhere else, but regardless of where you are, that's a tough situation for your own mental health, for everything, and being on a different time zone to everyone. I didn't anticipate how much that would hit. So basically, I'd wake up and I'd have until about midday to talk to anyone I knew.
Right.
And then they'd all be asleep. And then you've got the rest of the day just like, okay, here I am then. And trying, again, because I'm filming a TV show, trying to remain in decent shape and not just eat takeaway every day.
Right.
Trying to get some kind of little home gym set up in my Airbnb. The first day I was allowed out after my isolation, I'm a CrossFit wanker. So I was like, I found I'll get some kettlebells, and there was a shortage of kettlebells in Vancouver.
Everybody wanted to be, everybody was at home being a CrossFit wanker.
I walked a kilometer or two, and I finally found this place, and they had some. And I was like, yeah, I'll take a 20 kg and like a 25 or something like that. And then I came out, and it hadn't occurred to me, because I hadn't been out of the apartment in 2 weeks, I'd been on Wi-Fi that whole time. So my server hadn't found like a Canadian server or connected to anything else. I hadn't got a new SIM or anything. So I had no signal. So I couldn't call an Uber. So I had to walk several kilometers carrying 2 kettlebells.
45 pounds of kettlebell. 45 kilograms of kettlebells.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was fairly, I said, without them, it had taken about an hour to get there, or maybe 45 minutes to get there. So it was an hour or so's walk carrying these kettlebells.
And just like that, you're back in shape. Yeah. Just like
I got
that,
back
you're
feeling
fit again.
pumped. There was a point along the walk where I was thinking, is this a breakdown? Am I having a breakdown here? I'm on my own in a foreign land, dripping with sweat, shirt open, walking along the side of a motorway with 2
lugging kettlebells.
But as you say,
No
once I got
Wi-Fi.
in, I was like, that's my workout done for
Yeah.
today, my friend. I'm
I
feeling
might be
great.
able to take tomorrow off too, just in
Yeah,
case.
exactly. But yeah, I said, like, as a show, like that was a show where I got to be one of the leads on. I was like one of the lead bad guys. I got to have input on my character and ideas, and that just fired me up more for this industry. Like, just that's where I want to be. I want to be playing these roles. It's like we were talking about earlier with fights. I want to pay my dues. I don't think there's. I've never had a role or even audition come in that I've said, oh no, I'm above that. Like, that's too small. It's like, no, I want to put in the work and keep climbing that ladder. But having a taste of that and being a lead on a NBC show and having writers and directors who care about your artistic input and ideas
Right.
and direction, it was like, man, this is to have this as a job. This is madness. Like,
Right.
I'd do this for free. You're like, that's the reason that's the reason I have agents, is because I would end up doing everything for free otherwise. Their job is to go,
Right. Their
no,
job
no,
is
no,
to
no,
make
no.
sure that you
But
get
there's a lot
the
of money here. This
Yeah.
is a very
Yes.
expensive industry. And I'm like, all right, well, as long as I get to do this job, that'll be fine by me.
So one of the other jobs, you've mentioned it a little bit, the Distraction Pieces podcast, nearing
Yeah.
500 episodes.
Yeah.
I mean, started in 2014, if my research is correct. So
Yeah.
feels, so maybe not the first wave podcast, but
Mhm.
very much second wave and out in front of a lot of the people, because there's over the last, let's say 5 years, now everybody has a podcast. I have a podcast.
Yeah.
Here I am. What made you decide this is how I want to do it? Was it, because for me, the reason I have this show is exactly this. I want to sit down and have conversations with interesting people about any number of subjects. And it feels like that's what Distraction Pieces is for you. Let me just bring somebody in. I'm going to be amused. I'm going to be entertained. I'm going to be educated. And if other people are too, great.
It's what it says above us right now, conversation. That was all it was ever about, and the excitement of conversation rather than interviews or journalism in any way. It was a conversation. And again, I mean, the theme of today's conversation is people that are hard to defend at times. But I went on Rogan, and at that point I had a radio show in the UK. As I said, I just won a couple of awards, and I was on a break from it. I was listening to a lot of podcasts, and Rogan said to me, I can never remember if it was on mic or off mic. He said, so why are you doing a show for someone else? I was like, but it's commercial radio. It's a big station and everything. I was like, oh, and he was like, does it pay well? I was like, nah. No, doesn't pay well at all.
No, not at all. Yeah.
It really doesn't pay in the slightest. And he kind of prompted me there. So I started Distraction Pieces, and within the first month, I had more listeners than my radio show had on commercial radio, and I was earning more. Or within the first 3 months, I was earning more than I had on that show. So, yeah, it was exactly that. It was at a period, as you say, 2014 wasn't the start, but it was the early days of podcasting, really. And at that point, so much media, and I found that in my music career that we'd be in for a radio spot and we're literally in for under a minute. It's the shortest clip, or we're being interviewed for half an hour, and then what actually goes out is a 1 minute clip of this. And I was like, right, I don't want that, and I assume there's other people who don't want that. So yeah, I started the Distraction Pieces podcast. I was lucky that through my music career, I'd realized I'd met a lot of really interesting people. So I had a mixture of comedians, artists, actors, musicians, all these kind of things. So I felt at least off the bat, I could get at least a handful of interesting conversations in from pals. And then I've never stopped. I've put an episode out every week for, as you say, coming on for 9 years now. Yeah. And I've got the opportunity to sit down with some mad people. So, yeah, it's always a buzz. And the fact, again, as similar as your way of doing this, the fact that it's mine and it's up to me means I'm only talking to people I'm excited to talk to. I never have that. Oh, I've got a podcast in
Right.
half an hour. I'll get through it. It's like, no, I'm talking to MVP in half an hour. I'm talking to Dan Hardy, Mark Goddard, all of these
Right.
people. It's like, no, here's people I want to pick their brain. And it isn't an MMA podcast. I should be clear. I've only listed the MMA people I've had on there. But yeah, everyone from Mary J. Blige to Spike Lee to Simon Pegg to Michael Fassbender, Killer Mike, Action Bronson, all sorts of people. It's mad.
So one of the other things that has come up is you are a big time gamer and a big time streamer on Twitch. I saw the clip the other day where you made people aware. Listen, I am a big time gamer. I am a big time streamer. I'm hitting this flip. This is wild that this is happening.
Yeah.
What is it that you love about Twitch and about that kind of medium where you're able to do a thing you love and a thing you enjoy and share that joy with people that want to just come in and watch you do it, come in and hang out while you do it? Use that medium.
It's magnifying the joy as well, man. As said, my favorite memories of gaming was in my youth, where it'd be me and my mates all playing a game together and sitting around and watching and cheering each other on and taking the piss. And that's the buzz of Twitch, is you've got this community. I've built this really amazing community there who will laugh at you saying I'm a big time gamer, because I'm not great at any games. I'm no pro, but I really enjoy it. I'm enthusiastic. And yeah, it's great. It's finding another thing that I can do that's a job, but that I just really enjoy.
Right.
Again, I love the fact that the two constants I've kind of built in my life at the moment are the podcast and Twitch. And they're the things that if at any point that things get really busy with acting, or if one of my scripts get picked up, or if I go into development on anything, when I do get time off, that's what I'm going to want to do.
Right.
So, I mean, it's going to be a nice break.
Yeah, they can be paused, but they're always going to be there because they're yours.
Yeah, yeah. And it's not going to feel like, oh, I've got an afternoon off.
I guess I've got to stream.
I've got to go and do this. It's like, no, I've got an afternoon off. I've not played this game in ages. I've not spoken to all the people in that community in ages. Right. So yeah, it's a joy. But also, I love playing with, like, musically, we always played with genres, and with the scripts I'm writing, I try and do that. But I love doing that on Twitch as well. I've done things on there that are really kind of a short film, and played about with stuff. We've gone, oh, actually, the only rule here is that you're broadcasting to people. You don't have to be playing computer games. I did my first DJ set on there the other day. It's the busiest I've ever had a stream, because it was nice. I joked to people afterwards. It was nice to do something on Twitch that I'm actually good at. But because I had a club night for 10 years, so I was like,
right, I know how to
who's followed me on Twitch like gets to enjoy that. I'm perfectly happy with the fact I'm not great at this, but I'm enjoying it and we're having a laugh.
Right, it
was great to do something. Oh yeah, I can do stuff as well. I'm not just the guy that's bad at computer games and gets gradually better.
Right,
so yeah, that was a joy to do something. It's like, oh no, I'm half decent at that. So yeah, and it's another thing that it's a platform and a job that you're in control of. You're in control of what you do there. Like if you approach it like that, obviously if you're a full-time streamer, you might feel I have to be on at these times and do this.
Right, for sure.
I get to go, oh, but I don't fancy it, I won't, because it's not my main job as such. So yeah.
It feels like throughout sort of your progression of different careers and iterations, that ability to support yourself, create for yourself, be self-sustaining has been a big theme for you. It is a thing you posted about recently as well, talking about the start of the year with people that use various platforms for sex work. And I thought it was a really interesting thing to put out. I thought it was really special that you made sure to put that out there, because I think it is a thing that we have such a weird misconception about, that we have such a strange, I don't even know what the right word is. Here we've been talking about language and I can't find the right word.
Yeah.
But we look down
Well, there's
on
an entitlement. There's an
we look down on all of
We
these people, and yet so many of us use their services, consume their services, their work, whether theirs or others, and yet we disregard them at times. Why is it so important for you to advocate for them, and just the general, like, anywhere that you can make this money yourself, go and support these people, rather than the large, as I smash my mic, the large corporation that already has plenty of money?
I mean, people don't realize the really obvious comparison between the music industry and the sex work industry. Like, the music industry had a long period where there was loads of money in it and people were earning because people felt there was value in their art. And then all of a sudden people decided, no, I just want it all for free.
Right.
And we've lost so many amazing bands and artists who can't afford to do it full time because of streaming services or pirating or whatever else. And pornography is the greatest example of that. That I guarantee, if free porn was taken off the internet, people would start paying for porn pretty fucking quickly, because people enjoy it. And again, it's that illusion of, well, how did this come about? And again, music is the easy example here of, like, oh, I want, I'll pay X amount a month on Spotify and have all the music in the world. It's like, but that album could have taken 3-4 years to write and to record. So regardless of all the costs of recording studios and production and equipment, just surviving for 3 or 4 years to get that kind of album out of you is really tough. And again, sex work is something, again, there's a lot of things in the world that I have to adjust to understand other people's perception of it, because I don't think we should be looking down on pornography or anything like that at all, because I'm personally someone who uses it. So it's weird to think it's a product I want and I like or I enjoy, but everyone involved in it is disgusting.
Well, and that I don't want to pay for, and that I don't want to pay for.
I don't want to pay.
I don't want to support them.
Or that I'm above.
Right.
That I'm above. I don't need to pay for it. It's like, well, why not? Someone had to create it. And again, it's why, again, I have such a conflicted life, but OnlyFans is another one that, as a company, it's at points hard to defend because they've been really unfair. They've tried to kick sex workers off. They've done all sorts of things. But I think OnlyFans and sites like that have been a really important thing and will go down in history as a really important thing in women's rights, which sounds like a stupid and bold statement, but it took the power of the porn industry away from the big porn studios who exploited men and women, exploited performers, and put the power back in the hands of the creators of this work and of the performers. And I think that's a positive and empowering thing. I say an important thing for women because of the percentage of women versus the percentage of men on there. But there are men on there and there are couples on these sites. But yeah, I love the fact that power has been given back. And you don't, if you work in the sex work industry as a performer, you don't have to be putting yourself at risk with a dangerous producer or director or whomever else, which that industry was awash with. Just
in general, putting yourself in any kind of position that feels uncomfortable, literal or figurative position in that regard.
The power back.
Yeah, right. 100%. You can just create in your own house, in your own space, wherever you want. You control the distribution. You control all aspects of it. You mentioned the music industry. I mean, it's similar to the media industry. How many wonderful publications and, magazines, zines have we lost because at some point people went, oh, I don't want to pay for that anymore. I mean, we had The Athletic over here, or we still have The Athletic over here, which is a sports behind a paywall. Some stuff is free. They launched their MMA thing, and I was like, oh my God, this is 6 people that I'm quite friendly with. Like, I was already a subscriber, but like, to me, it was like, this is brilliant. This is, they're not going to be encumbered by the news cycle and we've got to do for clicks. They can just write what they want to write. It lasted a year. And I knew going in that it was going to last a year, because MMA fans go, well, I've been reading Chuck Mindenhall for X number of years, just out on my timeline. I'm not going to pay for it. We don't want to pay for the things that we enjoy anymore. And it's a really weird, it's almost like there really is a disconnect between, I get the thing that I want, but I'm not going to find any way to contribute to keeping that thing vital, to giving that thing life. We find it here. We plug the Patreon all the time, right? And yes, part of it is because it is the best URL in the business, SevereMMA.com/pints. But like, the reason I say it at the end of all of my shows is because it's a $5. You've got a $5. But if 100 of you have one, it helps us greatly. It helps us dearly. And we get to keep putting out the stuff that you want. And so if you flip that to pornography and sex work and things like that, you like that a whole lot more than you like us idiots talking about MMA. So support them, help them, give them opportunity.
And that was the point of that. I said, I simply did a tweet saying, look, it can be a tough time of year for people in the sex work industry because Christmas and New Year are all quite family events and so on and so forth. So people maybe aren't investing in that kind of stuff quite so much. But yeah, I just said, anyone who wants to promote their page, reply to this tweet.
And then it took
blew
off.
up, man. So many people were sharing, and again, it was a funny thing to see the taboo of pornography, because Twitter has recently brought in a view thing. So how many people have viewed the tweet? The amount of people who have viewed that thread versus the amount of people who've clicked
that
the like on
retweeted it or liked it,
vastly disproportionate.
There's a lot of people scrolling through that for their fix of boobs.
Yeah. And again, I ain't hating on that. I know things can be uncomfortable and people have different comfortableness with their sexuality and with their and with things like that. So that was more amusing. But I do feel
they don't want to let their friends see that they've liked a thread of sex workers.
Yeah. And the way I see it, again, to make the music comparison, is a lot of people have got Spotify, right? And now listen to a lot of music on there because they want to listen to a lot of music. But often, if you find a band that you really like or want to support, you'll buy their album or you'll buy their merch. And that's how I think we should be looking at sex work. Go on your Pornhubs or whatever else that's free. If you find someone you like, seek out their OnlyFans and seek out more work from them and support them. And I think it can all be positive. It would all be easier to be positive if it wasn't all such a taboo. If people weren't so uncomfortable talking about it or admitting that they watch porn. You do. We know you do. It's fine.
Yeah, it's okay. That we could do a whole nother conversation with about that. I'm sure there have been and will be future Distraction Pieces podcasts about it. I have kept you for 90 minutes thus far. I will get you out of here on some quick hitters. Is there a dream role, a dream collaborator, a dream interview for the podcast that stick out for you as this would be great? This might be the point where I go, well, it's not going to get better than this. I guess I'm done acting.
Yeah.
Guess I'm done podcasting.
Because the dream role thing is something I used to think about a lot until I started acting. And early on, before I had an agent, I hustled some meetings with big casting directors. And on one of them, I won't say who, I looked at their website. They didn't have a contact. So I just BCC'd info at that website, casting at that, and just guessed. I guessed like 30 different one of them hit and they replied. And I went in, and in that meeting, they said, "Oh, we think you'd be good for Game of Thrones, or maybe for the upcoming Star Wars, or Taboo." I'd never heard of what Taboo was. I was like, "Nah, I like the idea of Game of Thrones and Star Wars."
Right.
I then got the script through for Taboo, and it's Stephen Knight who did Peaky Blinder. It's Tom Hardy. It's Stephen Graham. It's all these amazing people. And that turned out to be an absolute dream role. So I think there's a lot of roles that I think my dream role is probably something I'm not aware of yet. But the addition to that in recent years has been the scripts I've started working on. So I'm writing my dream roles constantly. So my dream role is in one of the scripts I've written to get to take something like that into production and create something in such a industry that it's hard to create. So yeah. But yeah, that's a long answer to a quick fire question.
No, it's a good, listen, everybody often does the like, oh, I've rambled on. The point of this show is to be able to ramble on and to have long answers to quick questions. What's on tap? What's coming up for you? What is the next, let's say, month look like for you in terms of where people can see you, where people can hear you, guests that are coming on the pod?
So in true form of constantly finding new jobs, I don't know if it'll be this year or next year or what, but I'm just starting the process of learning how to produce my own films and how to start a production company, essentially. It sounds grand, but I've got some friends who are really successful in the industry who've kind of been saying to me, it's not as hard as people think. So they're kind of holding my hand. So the main focus for this year is to start the ball rolling on a particular feature film of mine that I want to write, that I've written and I want to direct and play some role in producing. So that is one of those things that at any point someone could push the button and I'm like, right, you're not going to see me on Twitch for a bit. You're not going to see me on the podcast for a bit and things like that. So yeah, that's the main thing going forward. Podcast wise, it's just constant and never ending. I recorded a podcast the other day with William Regal, WWE legend, absolute icon, and it's one of the best conversations I've ever had. And the heartbreaking thing is the podcast ended and I was thinking that's one of the best conversations I've ever had. We then talked for a further 40 minutes and I was like, that was better. So so the bit that wasn't recorded is even better. But for you guys, that bit is still, it's astounding.
Okay.
So yeah, that's a good one. And there'll be always more to come.
I can't wait for that one. Before I fully let you go, tell people where they can find you, whether it's the socials, whether it's the podcast, get people following you, because if you're not already, follow this man, pay attention to this man. He is a phenomenal artist in every way, shape, and form.
If nothing else, I'll be up at 5 a.m. tweeting about MMA on a Saturday. So
jump on
for that.
Twitter.
But yeah, I'm on Twitter and Instagram at Scroobius Pip. And yeah, the podcast is Distraction Pieces. And as you say, we're coming up to 500 episodes. So the easiest thing is pretty much type in Distraction Pieces and the name of anyone you're a fan of, and there's a good chance there'll be an episode with them. So yeah, give that a look. And then twitch.tv/Scroobius Pip. It's probably where I have the most fun these days. Like, it's always a joy just messing about on there.
Well, this has been an absolute joy, man. I can't thank you enough. This is on the list. I have a list on my wall of the people that I want to have on this show and reach out to. You were on that list from the first iteration, from our interactions just on Twitter, just getting to connect with you that way. This is an absolute pleasure to now connect in this form and have this conversation. I really do appreciate it.
Mate, as you know from our DM when you approached me, I'm a big fan of myself. I remember Sean bringing you in to do the state of the UFC chats, and again, I love when that happens, when someone comes on there and it instantly clicks, and I'm instantly like, oh, I get this person. I like what you're saying. Had exactly the same with Harry. Like you mentioned Harry Powell earlier. I've chatted to him a few times now because he was one that came on. And I was like, yep, I get this guy. I get what he's getting angry about.
Yeah.
And I get what he's getting excited about. Yep. I can agree with this. So yeah, as soon as you asked, I was 100% up for it. So I'm delighted to have had a chat. And I look forward to continuing to interact.
Well, I greatly appreciate it. I hope at some point, it's not always at 6 a.m. your time. I hope at some point, if you're back out here in Vancouver or I'm back over there, we can do it for real. We can have some pizza or whatever. It would be absolutely amazing. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. For Scroobius Pip, I am E. Spencer Kite. This has been A Conversation With, and we'll see you next time.